Welcome all, Dax here. As you can see by the title of this video, this is some of my early impressions of Starfield. I am about 13 hours in, and for that time I've mostly been focusing on the main quest with a few distractions slowing me down. So with this is just going to be kind of a collection of my early thoughts on the game, so I'd love to kind of get a conversation going if you've had a chance to play it as well. To start off, one of the first things you notice in almost any game is the visuals, and the lighting in this game looks top-notch, especially when you're wandering on it or you're just kind of moving around and rotating in real space. You can kind of see how the light changes, and you don't realize how important that is until you actually see it in action, but I think it really helps sell the whole planet explorer fantasy side of things. But of course, visuals only get you so far. You actually have to play the game, and early on, I was not necessarily impressed. You get thrown into a combat scenario pretty quickly, and I immediately was not the biggest fan of the combat in this game, specifically the shooting. I find the aiming to just feel off. I have a hard time lining up my shots. I was getting killed a lot actually at the beginning. As you can see by this footage, I'm sucking pretty bad. I've had to mess around with the settings a bunch of times to try to get the aiming motions to feel right, but it just feels off to me. I had similar issues with Fallout. I've never been a fan of any Bethesda shooting. Immediately that was kind of a big turn off for me, because I know that there's a lot of shooting in this game. It's basically a space shooter in a lot of ways. As I've gotten further in the game, I'm definitely not as bothered by it as I was due to a couple things. I was able to get the settings a little bit more attuned to how I like them. That and a larger selection of guns has definitely helped. I've been able to find what guns I like and don't like. Some definitely click with me more than others. Now, after you get into a shootout, one of the other first things you do is you go into space, and kind of like shooting, I was kind of disappointed by space. Like, I knew that you couldn't take off or land in real time. I was aware of that going in, but I just wasn't aware of how useless maneuvering was in your spaceship. Like, outside of combat or docking, you don't really do anything. Like, you don't feel like you're traversing from one point to another. You're just kind of sitting there and idling in space, and maybe sometimes rocks fly by you. And so that was pretty disappointing. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I was not a fan of that, because when you think of Starfield or you think of a game like this, you think of space travel, and this game is definitely not about space travel. So what I mean is, this is more of a game where you're doing planet exploration, but you're not actually doing a whole lot of space travel. I mean, I guess it's more realistic, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily more fun. As I've gotten further in the game, I've gotten more used to this. It's definitely something that you have to keep in mind. Now, most planets are empty and void of meaningful content, but in a weird kind of a way, I will say I was consumed on several occasions by the beauty and atmosphere of wandering on a rock in space. There's just something mesmerizing about the visuals of just being alone on a desolate planet. I think I heard Todd Howard mention a quote somewhere about beautiful desolation or something along those lines, which sounds like marketing jargon or something like that, but when I'm actually on some of these planets, I get what he's talking about. Being on these planets, you get some amazing just visuals to take in and absorb the atmosphere with. I personally spent probably at least 2 hours exploring just the planets within our own solar system and seeing what it feels like to just walk on those surfaces. But it's just cool to think, hey, this is what it feels like to walk on Mars. Hey, I'm on the moon. This is what it feels like to be on the moon. As mentioned, I've been spending the majority of my time focusing on the main story when I'm not sidetracked by exploring planets and things like that. But the main story itself is interesting. I'm always a sucker for a mystery setup, and so in this case, the mysterious artifact you find early on and trying to figure out what does it do, where is it from, has me interested, at least on a very basic level. Places look cool, but I haven't been wowed by any particular place, which was kind of surprising to me. They feel so small and disjointed. Like, they may actually be big, but they don't feel big because of the structure of how they're set up. There are a lot of smaller little sections that are stitched together via loading screens, and so it kind of gives you the opposite feeling of immersion. The way that this game structures cities is very much a good representation and parallel to how the game is just structured overall. The game is not small, it's very big, but it feels very small. Like, everything you do feels like it's disjointed from other things or every place you visit. Like, yeah, this planet feels big, but it doesn't really feel like I'm not able to go from this planet to this moon or from this city to this place. Kind of adding to this feeling is the menus. So everything is tied back to a menu, and the menus at first were a little bit confusing. I've gotten more used to them, but I still don't like how the menus are kind of a barrier between everything you do and everywhere you go. It's like everything always leads back to a menu. A reason why I think a lot of people will be jumping off of this game is due to its lack of guidance. So there's a tutorial section on some of the basic things, but there's just so many systems this game has, and it just doesn't explain them to you very well, if at all, which just leaves me confused a lot of times, just kind of messing around trying to figure out basic things. Like, I still don't understand how the crew system works. Like, I don't understand like what the max capacity is. Like, sometimes my ship's full of people, sometimes it's telling me I have a limit, but then even when I have a limit, there's people on my ship still. Just a lot of weird things like that. But with all this said, this is still my early impressions. Lack of guidance on how to interact with the game, so-so shooting, and a surprising lack of both space exploration and immersion left me a bit disappointed at first, and I still maintain some of those feelings, but as I've given the game more time, I am liking the variety of missions, my crew, planet exploration, the random encounters, and photo mode. This is the most I've used photo mode in a game since Ghost of Tsushima. Feel free to check out some of these photos I've taken, and when I eventually do post a review, keep a lookout for that. I don't know how long it's going to be, but probably before Spider-Man 2 comes out. Appreciate you for watching, and until next time, see ya.